much picking up from the beginning here. I've done a few rounds. So I'm just going to do a few more to give you an idea where we go. I always leave, when I put my work down, I leave 3 lines so I know where to start. 1 at the top. So I'm just basically going to pick up where I left off on this piece. This is a piece that is not really one of my normal pieces. A friend of mine brought a really beautiful stone, which I'll show you later on in the video. I can't remember what she told me it was, but it was really beautiful. Light blue and white colors, so she'd like me to do a little Kumihimo necklace to go with it. So I got the beads online, and as with any project that you are trying to match with supplies online, sometimes it can be a little bit difficult. I had, for the blue beads, I really wanted them, the blue-green to match the stone, or to correlate with it anyways, really what you want to do. And when I got the ones I had ordered online, they unfortunately didn't look anything at all like the picture whatsoever. So I had to rather quickly order from another company and get those shipped out express, because I didn't want to delay the project. And so I finally got everything. We're starting on it. I've already strung the Kumihimo disc, and I'm just beading. And as you can see, if you start from, this is really how I start. You'll take 1 string, pop it out, let a bead slide down. The most important thing that you want to know is that it's got to rest underneath this string here. It cannot go and jump on top. And by jumping on top, it may happen here so you'll see it, but when it happens you'll know. And if you let it jump and you're not paying attention and you just keep going with the project, you'll have a hole in your piece, a very obvious hole. So I've done it, believe me, but it doesn't really happen too much anymore because now I know what to look for. So I just go, I know to most Americans that'll be seeing this video, it's doing this backwards, but this is just the way I learned. I actually learned from an English lady online, and so this is the direction that I go. And you can see that it's a counterclockwise. But I'm just, every time I take a string, I slide a bead on, make sure it's underneath. Tension I find is very important. You see me pull this every so often to kind of tighten it back up. And then I just keep going. For this particular project, she didn't want a very fancy pattern. She just wanted kind of a dotted pattern to go with the stone, which I think was a good idea because I didn't really want to do anything that was going to detract from the beauty of the stone itself. This is just going to complement it very well without taking away from the overall piece. I've got some really beautiful end pieces and a pretty clasp to go with it. I am going to end up putting the stone on a slider, which I'll show you later on. But as you can see, I've strung every single line, every single thread or strand with white, except for one that I've done in the blue-green, really pretty. It's like a crystal light blue-green. It's got a little bit of a rainbow in it. It's very pretty. And when you do that, it makes this really subtle, pretty dotted pattern. As you can see, it's very clean. I did choose all gloss for both beads, which I don't normally do, but this stone is glossy, so it's gonna work very pretty with this. So I am just going to put this down now, and I'll connect with you later on this. So I just wanted to take a break here. I'm a little over halfway through, and I wanted to show you the piece. It's turning out quite nice. I also brought out the stone so you could see it. Very pretty. I think it's going to go quite nicely together. You can see it's got a really pretty glossy finish to it. Very subtle color, very nice. Just gonna play up the stone quite well. So we'll take another break here and I'll show you when I start finishing up the piece. Well, I'm at the very end here. I just wanted to do the last couple of rounds here. I've been kind of playing with this, and as you can see, a couple of my beads popped out. So I'm gonna have to go back and pop them back in. So as you see, I just kind of pop this off. I may tighten this one a little bit. And then put it back in here. And this, I'd already put the bead on, so we're good there. Oh, it popped off again. So again, here, let me try and put this better. A bit better. I don't have, see how that just comes up in the middle when I take that tension off? It's kind of hard for me to do this without the tension on it. It's really critical that you keep that tension on, because that's exactly what happens. Your beads just start to kind of pop off uncontrollably, and if I was just off of the side of the table here, it wouldn't be an issue, because I'm just trying to get this on film for you. So I'm just going around again with the very last beads, trying to get it back in its tension here. Again, I'm just having some issues. Okay. Every time I pull that off, I lose my all right, we're still good. That was the very last one of those two. The last blue one. And that's really the last of my beads. I have a couple more, but I've probably miscounted a little bit, which is not a big deal. I measured it. I'm right about at 19 inches. I wanted a 20-inch piece, but this is going to be fine, and I'll show you why in a bit. So really right now, I just want to close off the piece, and so I'm just going to continue without adding any more beads onto it. I'm just going to continue the weave for one complete round. So it's kind of important to see where I ended up, because now I want to end up over here without putting any more beads on it. And that's just going to tighten up the piece. As you can see, it closes it off. And it's going to leave me with a little about a quarter inch or a half-inch nubbin, something like that. The nubbin is what we call the ends. That seems to be a very common term of just the woven strands without any beading added to it. And that is going to assist in the finishing off of the piece. And you're going to see how I'm going to finish it up. This is going to be a non-glued piece. Which is kind of nice because it won't be all messy. It's sometimes working with glue is messy, especially the glue that I typically use for my pieces is 2-part epoxy, and it seems to be, for me only, I don't know why, but I don't know if it's because of the weather down in South Florida is very hot and humid, but the epoxy seems to be the only thing that I have used that has not failed on me yet as far as popping off. So sometimes it's nice to do a non-glued piece so you don't have to worry about these things. And I'm just gonna do a couple more rounds here, a couple more strands here, and then we will have done a quarter of a, what they call a quarter of a turn. I'll show you what that means in a minute. Work a little bit faster since the beads aren't popping off. Okay, so what we did was we went a quarter of a turn. So actually these 2 strands were over here in this position, and we worked a quarter of a turn. And you could see this basically gave us about a 1/4 of an inch nubbin to work with. So at this point, I'm gonna go ahead and tie off the ends. And for that, I'm gonna need my scissors, and I'm just gonna go ahead and cut these ends off. And I don't know why, which one of the scissors? Let's try it out. Here's my good scissors. Okay. I'm just gonna tie this off. I don't need any of this. I get all this out of the way. So just so you can see how we finish up a piece, how I finish up a piece so it's secure, which is going to be important for, so I take 2 of the opposing ends, which if I was weaving, that would be my next 2 strands I'd work with. And I just do over, under, over for a knot. Turn it, 1/4 of a turn. Take these 2, do the same thing, over, under, over, otherwise known as a square knot for any of you boaters out there. Turn it again, release 2 more pieces from the loom. And knot this and pull this as hard as I possibly can, because I, believe it or not, have had instances where I have gone through all of this, woven a whole piece, gotten to this point, tied all my knots, and then when I went to cut the ends off, the knots popped off. And once the knots pop off and the whole thing unravels, you cannot salvage it. I had to take the whole piece off and start over. So this very last one, you've seen I've pulled them all off the loom. This very last one I'm going to do a double knot. Just again, I want this to be tight, and it doesn't have to be pretty because we're going to cover this. Okay, so I can take the loom off now. Let's see what I've got here. This is the other end on the weight. Take that off. And I'm going to go ahead and cut this off here. I'll do it off camera because I don't want to make a big mess here. And here I am just going to very carefully snip these ends off. Again, you don't want to just willy-nilly just start like really cutting it so close. And then what I'm going to do here for the the pieces, this is what we ended up with, which is our finished Kumihimo piece. I went ahead and made a little, I did not have any jump rings that were big enough for this. So I just went ahead and wrapped some wire and put it on my slide here. And at this point, I need to go ahead and, well, I can do one end and then I can slide this on, but you're gonna see the drop. It's gonna have a very pretty drop. So that's why I wasn't really concerned that it was, the piece was a little bit shorter, about an inch shorter than I had intended. So it's gonna have a real graceful drop to it. It's real pretty. So I'm gonna put this aside right now and I'm gonna show you how I am going to do the ends and the clasp. So I decided on these real pretty ends because I thought they were very floral and they were very pretty with this slide. So what we need to do, as you can see, it's got a hole in it. I'm going to take a head pin. This is a bent head pin. It doesn't really matter for our purposes for this. And I'm going to go ahead and slide it. I'm going to try and pick a spot through this that I can kind of get it through easily. There we go. So you see I'm just sliding it through. I'm going to go ahead and bend this, this end like that. Again, this does not have to be like neat and pretty. I have it through like this. I'm going to squeeze it together as best I can without any gloves. And then when it gets too hard for me to squeeze with my hands, I'm just going to go ahead and do this. I just kind of squeeze it together. Now we have this nice spike coming up through there. I'm just going to slide this right over. And this is just coming up a little bit short for my liking. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take this off and try and do it just a little bit closer. I don't want to take this out. Okay. There we go. Squeeze it together. Try and get it as tight as you can. Okay, so you see that this is not going to come off at all. There's no way. I'm going to slip this over again, and I'm just kind of try and really mash it in. I want to kind of just mash this. There we go. So that nubbin on the inside just kind of folded over inside of there. And I'm going to really tightly, you have to really grasp this tight. You want to bend it at a right degree angle right there. And I know it's a little bit bigger than the Kumihimo, but that's okay. I did this on another piece and it turned out real pretty. And in any case, this is the back. But so here is my part of my clasp. As you can see, it's a toggle clasp. So on this one, let's see, we're going to go ahead and cut this about not quite a quarter of an inch, not quite a half. What is it, about a third maybe? And just cut that off. Take my round nose pliers here and just, while I'm kind of pushing down, I'm going to roll this like a quarter of a turn. You see that? And then with the smaller ends, I'm going to roll it just not quite all the way, because now I'm going to put this end in. course, I don't have really enough space here. So sometimes you really have to play with this a little bit because, as you could see, all right, there we go. This is not the prettiest job, but I'll play with this a little bit and get it straight. But for all intents and purposes, this is what you've got. This is a no glue end. Okay, at this point, because obviously this is not going to fit over this, I have to slide this in. So I'm just going to slide it on in. So we've got our ends, and then I'm going to do the same thing on the other end. And there might be one thing I might do differently here, because when we have, I might just redo this one in a minute, but I'll show you why in a second. When you do a toggle clasp, this part needs to be a little bit longer. You need a little bit of a longer end to it so that you've got space to slip it in so that it'll clasp. You've got to have a little bit of an allowance there. So sometimes what I do is I'll usually put a couple of beads on here. I might redo this one and do the beads on it. But let's see what we can play with here. So here we've got my head pin again. I'm going to bend that end up like that, just like so. I'm going to slip it in. I usually try and find like a really low area here. I found that it's, yeah, I just bent this. I find it's easier, and I'm just kind of twisting it. Be careful when it pokes out the other end, it is sharp. And I'm gonna go ahead and bend this up. Okay. I get asked all the time how the heck I can kumihimo with these nails. But actually, sometimes they turn out to be great little tools. And they don't break, really. All right, so I've got this. You see I did a little tiny bit of the lip. I'm gonna go ahead and slide this over and push this down. I really wanna get this so it's pushed in good. Look how we've got a little piece coming out. I don't like that. Sometimes you can just kind of do this with your pliers. There we go. All right, now what I really want to do here is I want to go ahead and add a couple of beads. So I'm going to go ahead and just take okay, there's one. And there's the other, okay? You see how I did that? I might even do a third bead here. I'm thinking it would be a good idea. You see how much that added on here? So this is gonna be the tricky part. I'm gonna bend this wire while pushing down on this. It's kind of important to push down, and then you wanna bend this. Here they go. Okay, and I'm going to cut this. You got to be very careful at this point that you don't let your beads go flying off, because they will. I'm going to try and make this a little bit bigger this time so I don't have that issue I did have last time. round nosed pliers. I'm gonna go ahead and slip this on. Really hard time with this grip, I'm gonna tell you. And I'm going to play with this a little bit because it's kind of lopsided and I don't like that. That's really not the way it's supposed to be. But I'm having some issues with the slippage here. I'm just going to show you this for now, just how it ends. So I'm going to go ahead and play with the other side, and then I'll come back and show you the finished piece. Okay, so after much playing with this, I finally got everything the way I want it. I have the 3 beads on the ends with the toggle clasp. I did the same on the other side as well to make it uniform. And I'm going to show you why we needed these 3 beads. To slide this toggle clasp in enough to get it all the way over into the loop. You see, I need all that extra play. If I had not added those beads, I could not have gotten that toggle clasp on there. So this is the way it ends up. Very pretty. We have our end piece on there, very graceful. It's a very graceful looking piece. And that is it for today. Please subscribe to my channel. It's fairly new. And I would love to start doing more of these tutorials. I will attach a link on there to see how you want to do this pattern. It's a very easy pattern. And until next time, thank you for joining us.